Silverstone beckons ahead of round 8 of the 2023 Ferrari Challenge UK. The full Grand Prix circuit means that these fantastic Ferrari 488 Evo cars can really stretch their legs in what is a 30-minute race that will be coming up very shortly, the penultimate weekend of racing. Temperature, well, track temperature has certainly climbed since qualifying. 38 degrees now is the track temperature. Air temperature is 24 degrees. We've still got a very, very light wind, so it's ideal racing conditions, but with that track temperature having climbed so much since qualifying, it'll be interesting to see how the drivers, the tyres, the cars and the mechanics have adapted settings to it. Now, Silverstone is a fast circuit, we all know that, and there are some key critical points around the circuit, so we managed to catch up with the pole sitter in this race, Carl Cavers, to talk us through some of those critical areas on track.
Overall, the track is one of the fastest in the world. It's a really good way of showcasing the power of the 488 Evo. Abbey and Farm, particularly quick. Cops, so easy to get that wrong. It kind of lures you into false sense of security by thinking you can take it quicker than you can. Just ensuring you brake at the right point, getting on the gas early to give you the run up to Maggots and Beckett's is essential. If you come off Cops and you know you've done a good job, you're not trying to chase the time. So if you're not trying to chase the time as you go into Maggots and Beckett's, you can just ease off, you don't overdrive the car, and that allows you to take the right apex, get on the gas early, and you just carry that speed all the way down to Stowe. If you do not get Maggots and Beckett's right, you are not going to get down to Hanger Straight at the right speed. You lose so much exit, it is unbelievable. So carrying too much speed in, you feel like a hero, and you come out feeling like you're pushing a shopping trolley. It's probably the most difficult part of the circuit. So easy to run off, and 3 track limits, and you've got a 5-second penalty, and making 5 seconds up in a race is almost impossible. The prestige of the track is fantastic. Just driving around it, racing around it is absolute privilege. But at the same time, it's such a long circuit. You don't have many opportunities to get it right, certainly in qualifying. So it's really important you nail it on your first or second attempt, otherwise you're just using tyre life.
A great insight there from Carl Cavers, and well, he absolutely got qualifying right because he starts this race from pole position. Well, he did win a race yesterday, and therefore he'll have accumulated more championship points than anybody. So let's have a look at the way the points lie in Trofeo Pirelli. Andrew Morrow still leads the way, but he came into this weekend with a 16-point lead in the championship. That's now down to 12 points as a result of that win for Carl Cavers yesterday, who moves up to second in the championship ahead of Hans Sickins, who drops to third. John Dillon is fourth. Faisal Al Faisal, with his first podium of the season, is fifth in the championship standings ahead of Graham Dazil, who's sixth. And then as we look towards the Trofeo Coppa Shell, let's have a quick look at the way that the point standings there. Paul Hogarth came into this weekend with a 22-point lead. That's been chipped down to 11 as a result of his non-finish yesterday. Paul Simerson is second in the standings. Jonathan Satchell sits there in third. And Chris Smith, who claimed to win yesterday, is there in fourth. So it's still perfectly poised. The championship can't be won in this race. It will go to Spa for the final round. But let's look back at some of the highlights from yesterday here at Silverstone. Carl Cavers qualified on pole position. Now Carl Cavers has squeezed his way through. It's a win for Carl Cavers.
So the highlights from what was a dramatic race yesterday. If we get a race half as good today, Amanda Stretton, we're in for a good one. if anything, the weather conditions even nicer than yesterday. And as Mark was referencing earlier, you know, the difference in terms of temperature between qualifying earlier on today and what we've got for the race today, it's throwing something of that pack of cards somewhat open, may I say.
Dave, you're absolutely right. Look, I've taken off my gilet for the first time.
Wow.
For the first time. No, it is. It's beautiful and warm down here, actually, and you can really feel the heat coming up from the track. And as you say, qualifying, that was interesting because we saw a lot of people in the position that we would expect them to be, but also many cars out of position as well. And certainly following on from the race yesterday, drivers not necessarily where they finished, having a lot of work to do in the race.
Absolutely, and the final cars making their way onto the grid, as we can see Julian Dye. So we'll make our moves forward, as indeed we always do. And of course, on the grid here as part of the Ferrari Challenge UK, we will bring you some of the drivers, of course, and some of those that overachieved, one of which is Faisal Al-Faisal, Amanda.
Well, absolutely. So Faisal was one of the drivers yesterday who made a remarkable sort of comeback during the race, starting P11, ending up on the podium. Today he's got another big job because he's actually starting P13, and he is getting some hints on what it needs to do by watching the Formula One race from Monza on his phone. So clearly this is important work. Important work. Faisal, just a quick interruption if I may. Are you getting any tips and advice on how to make it through the traffic?
Yeah, a lot of tips and advice, but once the race comes, they all go through the window.
Of course, it does all go out the window. Now, you made a really good comeback in the race yesterday, starting P11, ending up on the podium. Today, P13. You've got an awful lot of work to do.
Yeah, I wish that we had a better qualifying, but we didn't do a good in the qualifying, and hopefully we'll be able to make it up.
Well, fingers crossed. Do you enjoy the Formula One? Where is so we got Sainz, Verstappen, Leclerc. Okay, well, thank you very much for that. That was helpful.
Oh, thank you so much, Amanda, bringing us an update from Monza at the same time. How wonderful. So Faisal Al-Faisal with a lot of work to do today then from P13. I was just talking to Jack, his driver coach, and he says, do you know what? Faisal likes to race. And he says, I'm convinced he qualifies badly to keep me on my toes.
Just so that he has something to do.
Absolutely.
Something to do. I mean, it does definitely make the race more exciting. But, you know, the trouble with a track like Silverstone, once everyone gets spread out and, you know, people really start getting up to speed, overtaking can be a bit of a challenge.
Absolutely right. So here we are getting towards the front of the grid, and it's always
Quite
wonderful
busy.
to see, Amanda. Lots and lots of people down here enjoying the ambience and the atmosphere of the grid, pre-grid. And I was going to do something which wasn't in our rehearsal, and that is Mr. Francesco Barli. What a surprise. He'll be really cross with me about this, but regrettably, Francesco Barli, who's been managing director of Ferrari North Europe for a number of years, is taking up a new post, and therefore I'm really sad to say that this might be the last time on a UK grid that you and I talk to each other.
Yes, absolutely. After 10 years and 5 years of UK Challenge Championship, tonight I'm literally leaving to Paris. So you're going to do the race and I'm going to race to the airport tonight. So I'm sure we will both win today.
Well, okay. Bon voyage.
Merci. Merci.
Francesco, thank you so much for everything you've done for the Challenge Series here in the UK. A wonderful success, and much of it down to you.
Thank you, and always Forza Ferrari. Grazie ragazzi. A presto.
Arrivederci.
Sorry, that wasn't part of the plan, but I had to recognise the moment, Amanda Stratton.
Totally.
Francesco Barli has been a wonderful senior member of the Ferrari management team, and very much responsible for the Ferrari Challenge here in the UK. With no objection from you.
Oh, when do I object?
Often. I'm going to go and talk to Robert Rees, and I think you're going to talk to Paul Rogers, so I'll do Robert first.
You go that way.
Okay, well, Robert Rees then, who's done a fantastic job in qualifying today, has absolutely no idea that I'm going to speak to him, and he'll probably be quite cross with me. But that's part of my life, isn't it? Robert Rees, brilliant job today in qualifying. Well done to you. Feeling confident for the race?
I'm feeling happy for the race day.
What was it about today's qualifying where you were just able to hook everything up, Robert?
It was just confidence. We had more confidence today. We had new brakes, new tyres. We bedded all of those in, and it all came together very well.
The stupid question, as always, from a position like this, what do you hope to achieve from the race? But surely a podium is within sight.
I would like to achieve a podium, Dave.
Wish you the best of luck, Robert, and thank you so much for talking to us right at the start of the race, and thanks to his team for allowing us to talk to Robert Rees. And right now, I'm sure that Amanda Stratton is standing by with Paul Rogers.
I certainly am. I'm going to bend down and have a little quick chat, if I may, Paul Rogers. I spoke to you just after qualifying. You were very happy with your achievement. It's pole in your category, in the Coppa Shell category. You had a little secret bit of advice. Are you ready to share it?
No, I'm sworn to secrecy with the other driver, but it was all to do with carrying maximum speed through some of the slower corners, and that was helped a little bit, and actually a nice little bit of coaching. It was very good.
Right, this thing really does get in the way, doesn't it? Okay, so this is the first time you're starting on pole in your class. How are you feeling about this? Because of course now you've got a target on your back rather than chasing other guys down.
Yeah, I've actually been on pole before, but not this year, just through various mishaps and stuff. But yeah, I've got the guys chasing me down, but I'm just going to have to try and replicate my qualifying and stay ahead of them.
Just keep looking ahead.
Yeah, looking forward.
Okay, yesterday the start of the race was quite messy. We had quite a lot of cars, sort of a bit of contact, cars spinning. How are you going to keep out of all of that?
I'm just going to follow Andrew. Andrew never gets into any trouble, so if I stick to the back of him, hopefully I'll be all right.
That sounds like an absolutely class piece of advice there. Just stick to Andrew. Right. Oh, there you are. There's too many people in red.
Yeah, funny that. Great Ferrari Challenge UK weekend. I couldn't help but notice, and Pete, our cameraman, and Andy, another cameraman as well, there seems to be an awful lot of activity, or there was, around the Paul Hogarth car. So fingers crossed, I hope everything is going to be all right for Paul Hogarth. To our left-hand side, John Dillon, who goes from a very, very good grid position on the second row of the grid. Now, Andrew Morrow, he's right alongside us and your side, and what can Andrew Morrow do from there, Amanda Stratton?
Well, I will go and ask him. So, Andrew, you must have the bit between your teeth this weekend.
Yeah, look, we're still in a good position for the start of the race, so just see what way the start unfolds, and we'll try and keep with the guys in front. As an opportunity arises, I'm going to try and take it, so we'll just see what way it all pans out.
Now, watching your progression around here yesterday, your racecraft, you know, you had the car dialed in, and every time there was a little gap, it looked like you were in the right place to seize on that opportunity.
Yeah, yes, we got a good start, managed to get away in first from the start of the race. Safety car created a wee bit of hassle for me, but yeah, the car felt good just towards the end. Didn't think Carl would have made that jump, but then again it was a good pass from him and I wasn't able to get it back. Only one lap to go, so we'll try and not make that mistake again today.
And how do you prepare going into this race? Obviously it's the second race here at Silverstone. You've seen how these guys raced yesterday. How do you get ready for this?
Just stay focused as always, focus on the job ahead, just do what I can do and see how it all pans out.
Great stuff, but it's quite warm in there actually. Good luck, Andrew Morrow.
Well done, Amanda Stratton then with Andrew Morrow, which kind of just leaves us perhaps with the pole setter. And given that you spoke to Carl yesterday, I think it's high time that I jumped in and spoke to Carl Cavers just ahead of the start of the race. Carl, of course, brilliant qualifying yesterday, brilliant qualifying today. In the early stages of the first few corners yesterday, it didn't perhaps go all according to plan. Presumably you have a different strategy today, Carl?
No, same strategy, Dave. Just try and keep it clean. We've got a good pace, so if we lose a position at the start, we just get it back later in the race. But obviously we'll be fighting to keep the place.
It seemed unbelievable when I saw you on the top step of the podium yesterday, Carl, and I only say unbelievable because you should have been there so many times before, in my opinion. Does it help you as a racing driver to come off the back of that confidence, knowing that you can do it, as we always did know?
Yeah, I meat it was great to get that win out of the way. We've been on the podium every single round, and being on the top step, if we can double it up today, it'll put a bit of pressure on Andrew in the championship. And we all go to Spa with it all to fight for.
We wish you well, and thank you so much for talking to us. So Carl Cavers then with jobs to do.
And we're getting ushered off the grid as the heat rises down here on the grid. Mark, I'm sure you're very happy to be sitting upstairs in the nice, cool commentary box where you have got a splendid view of what's about to happen.
Thanks, guys. Brilliant job down there on the grid. Yeah, the air conditioning's working in here today. It was rather warm yesterday without it, so it's all perfectly paused. So the cars are going to head off shortly, so let's dive on board for the final time this weekend. An onboard lap with Paul Simerson to show us around the track. So over the start-finish line, Paul's in 5th gear. He'll shift up to 6th. And then as you head up towards Abbey, there's a quick dab of the brake. Pitch the car in, flat out through the left-hander at Farm. And then from there, move the car all the way over to the left-hand side of the circuit. Village, heavy braking area, down to 3rd. Grab the apex, short acceleration up towards the loop. Take a nice wide line in because you need to get a really good exit coming off the tightest corner on the track. Carry the speed out of the exit, through the left-hand kink at Aintree and onto the Wellington straight, using as much of the circuit as you possibly can. Build the speeds up towards 6th gear as you head underneath the vehicle bridge and up towards the braking area for Brooklands. Late on the brakes, and then trail the brakes as you head in towards a late apex at that corner. You're down to 4th, short squirt up towards Luffield, down to 3rd for Luffield, and again late apex, V off the exit, and ensure you get on the power nice and early to get a good exit all the way round through the flat out right hand kink at Woodcote on towards the National Pit Straight. Copse Corner is next up, so you're heading down towards Copse Corner. 5th gear, dab of the brakes, power on nice and early, but don't let the car run too wide and avoid those track limits on exit. Up to 6th, flat through the left-hander at Maggots, which just comes up to you very, very quickly, and then it's a slight break for the first right-hand aspect at Beckett. You're down to 5th at that. Then through the left-hand aspect, give a bit of time through that, because again, as Carl Cavers was saying in the VT, you've got to get out onto the hanger straight at maximum speed and carry all of that momentum all the way down. So you'll head up towards Stowe Corner, important corner, and then in towards Club, and we're not quite going to get through the lap in time because we need to give you the grid, don't we, for round 8 of the championship that's coming up very shortly. So let's guide you through the grid then and the way they line up after qualifying. It is Carl Cavers that starts on pole position with Hans Sickins that sits alongside on the front row of the grid. Row 2 of the grid, it's the championship leader Andrew Morrow, and he's got John Dillon for company. Onto the 3rd row of the grid, and this is where we see the man who qualified on pole in Coppa Shell, which is Paul Rogers, and alongside him is Robert Rees with a brilliant qualifying session from him, as we heard from down on the grid. Row 4, Graham DeZille lines up alongside the championship leader in Coppa Shell, Paul Hogarth, who didn't quite knit it together in qualifying, and row 5 sees Paul Simerson line up alongside Stuart Marsden. The 6th row of the grid, work to do for the car of Faisal Al Faisal. He lines up alongside William Tewier. And then row 7 of the grid sees Elliot Pickering, who's got a 3-place grid drop because of a penalty from yesterday alongside Julian Dye. The 8th row of the grid is Peter Hunter and Jonathan Satchel, but there is one more car that will join this race, and that is Chris Smith. He will start from the pit lane. He had a big spin in qualifying that damaged his tyres as a result of needing new tyres, which was outside of his championship allocation. The penalty for that is you get the new tyres, but you have to start from the pit lane. So he's left himself a bit of work to do in this one. So Paul Hogarth diving for the pit lane, the championship leader in Coppa Shell, peels off into the pit lane. So what is all that about? He non-scored yesterday. Let's hope he just wants to stay out of trouble today. So Carl Cavers is the red car with the Dayglow flashes that sits there on pole position. And it's the metallic red and black and silver car of Hans Sickins alongside. Carl Cavers couldn't convert pole position to the early race lead yesterday. Might he be able to do it today? 30 minutes are on the clock. We're about to get round 8 of the 2023 Ferrari Challenge UK underway here at Silverstone, the home of the British Grand Prix. Lights go out and we're away and racing for the 8th time this year. A good start from Carl Cavers this time. He should lead as they head up towards Abbey for the first time. Hans Sickins is there in 2nd place, and Andrew Morrow does slot through into 3rd position by the look of things. Yes, he does. Andrew Morrow's there in 3rd, and Robert Rees in the early stages looks as though he's got himself through and ahead of John Dillon. So Robert Rees in the blue number 8 car is leading Coppa Shell in the early stages. Now, this was the section of the circuit yesterday where we had a few little issues for a few cars. They are treading slightly more cautiously today. Doesn't look as though anybody has fallen over anybody else just as yet, so they build the speeds as they head out of Aintree Corner and along the Wellington Straight for the first time, with Carl Cavers under pressure for the lead of the race. Up towards the braking area for the left-hander at Brooklands. Carl Cavers leading the way, looking to try and scoop up 2 wins this weekend if he can. But Hans Sickens, who's already claimed 2 wins so far this season, is hot on his heels in second place. And Andrew Morrow, who has failed to finish off the podium in any race so far this season, sits there in 3rd position at the moment. Down towards Cop's Corner, the top 3 just starting to break away from the car that sits there in 4th position, which was still Robert Rees at the wheel of the blue car. Looked as though he ran a little bit wide there, just coming out of Cop's Corner, just beyond the curb lines. But of course, cold tyres, those Pirellis, still coming up to temperature at this stage. Also need to try and keep an eye on what's going on at the tail end of the field, of course, with Chris Smith having started from the pit lane, and also Paul Hogarth having started from the pit lane. But onto the Hanger Straight for the first time they thread their way. John Dillon's still there in 5th position. 6th place looks as though it's Stuart Marsden. He's got Graham DeZille right behind him, and then the green car with the silver flashes to it is Faisal Al Faisal. And that is Graham DeZille at the wheel of the number 19 car, through and up the inside of Stuart Marsden there. And I think Faisal Al Faisal will probably follow through on the exit of Stowe Corner as well. But he's on the outside line, going down in towards the braking area for Club, and almost had 2 wheels on the grass there as they got towards the braking area. Stuart Marsden was not going to let him through. Wants to try and keep that Trofeo Pirelli car behind him. Now Carl Cavers has bolted away, hasn't he, in the lead of the race. All of a sudden, the latter stages of lap number 1, he's through, and Hans Sickens makes a bit of a mistake heading round through Abbey, and then as they head up towards Farm, that allows Andrew Morrow to rather effortlessly edge his way by. But Hans Sickens is then so late on the brakes for Village, he looks to try and thread his way up the inside. Door closed, Morrow through, up to 2nd. Hans Sickens down into 3rd position, and into the pit lane, I'm afraid to say, at the end of that lap has come the car of Jonathan Satchell. It's been a disappointing weekend for the man who lives just a stone's throw away from Silverstone. So his car is in the pit lane, and hopefully it's an issue that they might be able to resolve. So in towards the braking area for Brooklands Corner. You can see how late the apex was there for Andrew Morrow. Looked as though he was going to overshoot it, but beautifully grabbed the apex. It was just a very, very late apex that he decided to take on that occasion in his efforts to try and pull away from Hans Sickens, who he's just taken 2nd place away from. And ideally, of course, he wants to close up on our race leader, Carl Cavers, who at the end of just the first lap of racing was leading by 1.3 seconds. We've still got Robert Rees in 4th place. He is leading the Coppa Shell element of the race at the moment. The way to tell the cars apart is that if it runs in Trofeo Pirelli, it's got a red windscreen header. If it's a yellow windscreen header, it's a Coppa Shell car, and you can see there Stuart Marsden. So Jonathan Satchell, it was just a small issue which they've managed to resolve, so he will rejoin the race. Stuart Marsden coming under pressure as they head out of Chapel from Faisal Al Faisal, who made good progress in yesterday's race, didn't he? Didn't hook together qualifying, went from 11th up to 3rd. Well, at the moment he's come from what was 13th ultimately where he qualified, but he, with penalty drops for others and pit lane starts for others, started 11th today. Well, that is now, with that overtake on Stuart Marsden, going to put him up to 7th position. So again, a bit like yesterday, making very good progress through the order. So Carl Cavers completes his 2nd lap of the race. Lead advantage has grown to over 3 seconds at the moment. Now, Faisal Al Faisal's progress yesterday was slightly aided. That's not taking anything away from what he achieved yesterday, but it was slightly aided by a safety car which bunched the pack up once more. Well, no obvious signs of any requirement for a safety car at the moment, so he's got to keep pushing. He is at the moment about 12 seconds off the leader and about 4 seconds off gaining another place. Stuart Marsden coming under pressure, the number 15 car, the all-red car, not his regular car, but he's coming under enormous pressure from Paul Simerson, who lies 2nd in the championship standings in Coppa Shell. Stuart Marsden lost a bit of ground yesterday with a couple of double spins in the first race, and he'll hope to right those wrongs of yesterday, because he's currently 2nd in Coppa Shell at the moment, but has Paul Simerson and also the car of Paul Rogers right behind him. Paul Rogers didn't really get the start that he wanted in Coppa Shell. Grabbed a pole, but at the moment is off the podium slots at the wheel of his pink and purple machine. So the 3 of them squabbling away. This is for 8th, 9th and 10th, but 2nd, 3rd and 4th in Coppa Shell as they head along the national pit straight in towards the braking area for Cop's Corner. It's still at the front of the queue, the red number 15 Maranello sales car of Stuart Marsden, but he's coming under pressure now from the Grey Paul Birmingham car of Paul Simerson, who looked to weave his way through. The difficulty for Paul is that if he tries it and it doesn't work, the Paul Rogers is poised and ready to pounce, representing JCT 600. So the trio edge their way out of Beckett's and then start to work their way onto the hangar straight. Paul Simerson picking up the tail with the all-red car of Stuart Marsden. He's firmly in the slipstream. He's weaving one way, weaving the other. Is he going to try anything as they head up towards Stowe? Well, he jinks out from behind, but he's too far away, so the order still remains the same at the moment. It's still Stuart Marsden in 8th place, Paul Simerson in 9th, and then Paul Rogers, who completes the top 10 at the moment. Downhill and in towards the braking area for Club, heavy braking area. Stuart Marsden brakes a little bit earlier than Paul Simerson, who has claimed 1 win so far this season in Coppa Shell. He's had 6 podiums though in Coppa Shell so far this year, whereas for Stuart Marsden, he's had 3 podiums but hasn't had a win as yet. Well, at the moment, he's clinging on to 2nd in Coppa Shell, but the cars right behind him are there in 3rd and 4th. He's going to have his work cut out here in what are warm conditions, I would imagine, inside the cockpit of these 488 Evo Challenge cars. Tighter line taken in towards Village by Stuart Marsden, and Paul Simerson sends one up the inside as they head in towards the loop, and that was a very brave move up the inside, but now the door is open. Paul Rogers is trying to sneak his way through as well, so Stuart Marsden has lost the position. He's dropped to 3rd in Coppa Shell. That'll put him 9th overall in the race at the moment. He just prevented Paul Rogers from losing him a further place. So Paul Simerson now at the wheel of the number 77 car. What can he do to try and pull away from the car that he has just taken the place away from? Long way to go in the race still. 22.5 minutes still remain. Carl Cavers out front, leading the way from Andrew Morrow. Hans Sickins is in 3rd place. Paul Rogers flashing his lights there as he remains in 10th position and 4th in Coppa Shell, but he's doing anything to try and put off the all-red Maranello sales car of Stuart Marsden, who finished 6th in the Coppa Shell standings last season. Ran a little bit wide there coming out of Copse Corner. You can run onto the curb, but you shouldn't go beyond it in theory. He just seemed to take a little bit more of the green tarmac than perhaps he ideally would have wished. That might just have compromised his exit speed coming out of Copse Corner. Needs to get back on it again and get a good exit here, heading out of Beckett's and on towards Chapel, because all of the time just pulling away is that metallic blue number 77 car of Paul Simerson. Stuart Marsden is, I think, looking to see where he might be able to still hang on to the final podium spot in Coppa Shell. So they're heading through Stowe, down the Vale and in towards Club. They're on lap number 4 currently. The race leaders overall, Carl Cavers is now on his 5th lap of the race. He's edging away all of the time. Lead advantage is now up to 4 seconds between Carl Cavers and Andrew Morrow. But it's a brilliant battle for 2nd, 3rd and 4th in Coppa Shell. 8th, 9th and 10th overall. Works its way onto its 5th lap of the race, with Stuart Marsden again just feeling the pressure a little bit from Paul Rogers. Remember, Paul Rogers was the pole sitter in Coppa Shell, the number 20 car, down to 4th in the early stages of this one. Hasn't had a win as yet in Coppa Shell, and is going to try and undo Stuart Marsden, as he now couldn't quite get the job done on the exit of the loop, so sits behind him by the time they get towards Aintree Corner. Paul Rogers, that first podium of the season yesterday, is the catalyst for him pushing even harder today. Grabbed pole earlier on, didn't get the best of starts, but Stuart Marsden has run wide, heading in towards Brooklands. The door is open, and Paul Rogers is in the perfect position, pounces immediately, and is able to apply that pressure to Stuart Marsden. There's a little chink in his armour, through goes Paul Rogers, picks up the place, and now gets himself onto the Coppa Shell podium currently. The next thing Paul Rogers will want to do is try and close up on the other Paul Simerson, who lies ahead. The gap between the pair of them is going to be around about 1.5 seconds, one would have thought, as we reach the first third of the race already having expired. For Carl Cavers, he is a long way round the 5th lap now and is just turning his way out of Stowe Corner for the 5th time, enjoying quite a handsome lead. Now, how hard is he pushed in the early stages? He wanted to make sure that he got a better start than yesterday. I spoke to him earlier on and said, you know, have you run through all of the scenarios in your head? And he said, well, there's just no point, Mark, because if I run through them, that's not what will happen. So I'll just have to deal with it when the race gets underway and cope with whatever is thrown at me. And at the moment, He's got a handsome lead, hasn't he, between himself and Andrew Morrow, who equally as much has got a reasonably handsome lead between himself and Hans Sickins. The blue car is still there in 4th place, which is Robert Rees doing a brilliant job of upholding honours for Coppa Shell. He's got 2 Trofeo Pirelli cars behind him though, the first of which is the number 61 car of John Dillon, has yet to finish on the Trofeo Pirelli podium so far this year, and also the Brands Hatch winner Graham DeZiel in the red car with the yellow stripe right the way down the centre. The Meridian Modena car is next up, and Graham DeZiel is running in the final place inside the top 6. So Robert Rees doing a brilliant job for Dick Lovett Swindon. We haven't seen him on the podium in Coppa Shell so far this year. Well, he is at the moment leading the way and would be a very, very happy man if he could hang on to it. I think the best overall finish we've had for him is in the teens as well. I think something like 13th position. Well, he is currently sitting in 4th place, so something has clicked. Not sure what they fed him this morning in qualifying or what he's had for lunch, but it's certainly working, and he is more than holding his own against the Trofeo Pirelli cars that sit behind John Dillon, with, by the look of things, just the bonnet flapping around very slightly on his car. Looks as though everything is firmly attached, but that's maybe just a little bit of residual issue following a small amount of contact that he had yesterday at the front of the car. But all is good for the moment for John Dillon. So we've got 17.5 minutes just over of the race to go. Through Woodcote Corner and up towards Copse, there's a good fight going on. Julian Dye has got his hands rather full, and he has got Elliot Pickering right behind him. So those two are busy fighting away for 13th and 14th position. I think just behind them is the car of William Tewier. Paul Hogarth, the championship leader, who came into the pits at the end of the formation lap, is out there and circulating. So, but he is down in 16th position and 9th in the category at the moment. So 9th is not going to net him any championship points at the moment. He would need to maybe push and get a fastest lap, and at least then you get 1 additional championship point for that. But it's only the top 8 that score in, whether it be Trofeo Pirelli or the top 8 in Coppa Shell. 15 points for a win, 12 for second, 10 for third, and so on. It diminishes by 2 points there, apart from you get 2 if you're 7th, it's just a single point if you're 8th. So Robert Rees feeling the pressure. John Dillon is still with him as they vie over who wants to finish 4th overall and who wants to finish 5th. But for Robert Rees, it's not going to make it easy for John Dillon to get by, but if John starts to really come towards him, then he might be best just to let the Trofeo Pirelli cars through, and I think that's what he opts to do there. Robert Rees probably chatting in conjunction with his pro driver coach. Let the Trofeo Pirelli car go through. John Dillon at this stage is not fighting you for championship points. He is fighting you for overall position, but having lost a place, because it's a car in a different class that's gone through, doesn't affect the championship points that Robert Rees will score, because he still leads Coppa Shell at this stage. Now he might do the same with Graham DeZiel as well, and just let Graham DeZiel go through as well, and yes, that would drop him from 5th down to 6th, but again, it's still at the moment maximum points in his class. So through Maggots up towards Beckett's. We're almost at the halfway point of this race now. They're on lap number 7 currently, and the brake car of Robert Rees still leading the way. Now, is he going to let Graham DeZiel go through? Graham gets a good exit coming out of Chapel, but I'm not sure he's quite close enough to sneak his way through on merit as they head up towards the braking area for Stowe. And indeed, now Graham DeZiel, who first cut his teeth in single-seaters and got as high as the British Formula 3 Championship in the 1980s, but has been a regular Ferrari racer for a very, very good number of years now. And that's a problem, I'm afraid, and that is Jonathan Satchell, who is out. Jonathan has had a rotten weekend, such a shame for him, and for Jonathan Satchell, that is going to mean he's not able to see the checkered flag today. So that's disappointment for him. He finished, 10th yesterday, did Jonathan? It's been a tough weekend for him. He's not able to repay the hard work that's gone in that garage. Right, Graham DeZiel up the inside of Robert Rees. Robert Rees is not going to let him through though. Chopped straight across the nose, and was absolutely right to do so to prevent Graham DeZiel working his way through. So Robert Rees still hanging on to what is 5th position at the moment. didn't let the Trofeo Pirelli car through. So those two will head down Wellington Straight towards the left-hander at Brooklands. Squeeze the throttle for a few seconds before you then make your way up towards Luffield. And those two may well get caught, Robert Rees and Graham Dezeal, by the next car as well, which is Faisal Al Faisal, who has been working tirelessly hard to close in. He was the best part of 2 seconds quicker than the pair up the road last time through. We've still got Julian Dye fighting away with Elliot Pickering. Those two are just making their way out of Aintree now and along the Wellington Straight. Ahead of them is going to be the car of Peter Hunter, but they're certainly enjoying themselves, these two. They have been pretty much rooted together for the last half a dozen laps or so. Just 0.2 of a second separating the pair of them as they came over the start-finish line. Julian Dye in the very luridly liveried Marileno sales car, and Elliot Pickering, representing Stratstow Manchester, sitting firmly in his slipstream as they head out of Woodcote Corner and over the start-finish line. So through Copse Corner go the pair, still squabbling over 13th and 14th position. Has Elliot Pickering been able to get a better run out of Copse? I think he did. Now that looks as though it might be an engine cover that's come off one of the cars. Just a little bit of debris in the middle of the circuit there. That is slap bang in the middle of Maggots and Beckett's. And you could see there that Julian Dye and Elliot Pickering were just having to alter their ideal line through that part of the circuit so as to avoid making any contact with that little bit of debris that sits there on the circuit. So hopefully that won't get hit by a car. Hopefully it won't also need the introduction of a safety car, because that's less than ideal if that happens for Carl Caver, because he's got a 5-second lead now between himself and Andrew Morrow, who has got an 8-second lead between himself and Hans Sickins, who's got 7.5-second lead between himself and John Dillon. So the top four are slightly strung out compared to the really close race that we had yesterday. So some of that will be down to the fact that the track temperature is now 38 degrees. Some drivers and cars will be perhaps better suited to it, or would have adapted to it better than others. Graham Dezeal has finally worked his way through and ahead of Robert Rees. So for Robert Rees, that is another car that has gone through and ahead of him, but that is another Trofeo Pirelli car that's gone through and ahead of him. So he still leads the number 8 car, Coppa Shell at the moment, and even the next car behind that is Faisal Al Faisal. He is also a Trofeo Pirelli car, but I'm afraid we are going safety car, so has been deemed that, one would imagine, because I can't imagine it's anything to do with Jonathan Satchel's car that's pulled right off towards the barriers, but I think that debris that sits in the circuit has been deemed to cause a safety issue. So out comes the safety car and brings the race to a controlled status. So for Carl Cavers, 5.1 second lead is going to evaporate to absolutely nothing. Andrew Morrow will be right with him, and of course brings Hans Sickins into the mix as well, who is 8.6 seconds off Andrew Morrow and 13 seconds off the lead. It brings back into it John Dillon, who was 21 seconds off the lead. All of those gaps are going to evaporate to absolutely nothing. And what is hugely important now also for Robert Rees is that, yes, whilst Graham Dezeal went through on that lap and dropped the Coppa Shell leader from 5th down to 6th position, come the restart of this race, Robert Rees will still have a little bit of a buffer behind him, because that buffer will be the car of Faisal Al Faisal. Right, it's a bonnet that's come off the car, because I've just spotted John Dillon's car going round with the front bodywork missing from it. So I did say it was flapping a little bit, so I thought it was secure, but clearly the wind has just got underneath it and has flipped that up. So there is Graham Dezeal, sending one up the inside at Brooklands of Robert Rees. So that was how he managed to sneak his way through and move himself now up into 5th position and ahead of the Coppa Shell leader. So we've got the final third of the race coming up at the moment. Shouldn't take long, it should be a fairly brief safety car period, so it's just a case of one of our brilliant Silverstone marshals. There's a gap in the traffic, there he is, working his way out. There comes the front bodywork off the number 61 car, looks undamaged. I think it's just the wind that's got underneath it, and as ever, superb work done by the marshals, whether it be Snetterton, Alton Park, Brands Hatch, or here at Silverstone. Always amazing work done by our marshals, but of course, that was a long way for somebody to run out whilst the race was still in progress, out to get that bodywork and get back in time. There just wouldn't have been a safe gap in the traffic. So deploy the safety car, bring it to a controlled status, and then the marshal can get out there, recover the bodywork, and get back behind the relative safety of the barriers in time as well. So brief safety car period, I would imagine. No confirmation as yet, but it could be in at the end of this lap. So we're not going to get much time behind the safety car. And even in these conditions here, behind the safety car, there's still work for the drivers to do. You can see the drivers weaving around from side to side. There is the bonnetless John Dillon car. Now that's going to affect his aero, so John Dillon may well struggle a little bit, because of course there's going to be less aerodynamics to the car because of the bodywork that's missing, and therefore there'll be more drag, but also it may well affect the turning of the car as well. It's not quite probably going to have the front end grip that he'll want anymore. So interesting to see how he deals with this and what feedback he is giving to his race engineer and pro driver that sits behind him. So everybody has safely bunched up. I think the only car that hasn't quite caught the trainers yet is Paul Hogarth. The safety car is in at the end of this lap, so confirmation just received from race control that the safety car will be in at the end of this lap, so it's extinguished its lights. It can now start to accelerate away from the pack of cars behind, and now it's up to Carl Cavers to decide as to when he wants to get things back underway. He needs to leave enough of a gap so that when he decides to press the accelerator and go for it, that he doesn't catch the safety car. There is also no overtaking allowed until they reach the start-finish line. So once Carl Cavers goes for it, which it looks as though he is about to really push now, heading in towards Club, he cannot be overtaken until the start-finish line. You can be alongside, you can't have your nose ahead when you get there. And there's also the lapped car of Paul Hogarth in the mix as well. So over the start-finish line they'll go. John Dillon jinks out from behind Paul Hogarth, but has already got Graham DeZiel looking to make it 3 wide, and Graham DeZiel instantly goes through. So he's up into 4th place now, the Brands Hatch winner. And the bonnetless car of John Dillon already picked off by one car. Is he going to come under pressure from the next of those behind, which will be the Coppa Shell leader of Robert Rees, who is under pressure himself from Faisal Al Faisal. And don't rule out the fact that the number 77 car of Paul Simerson is not that far away as well, and he'll want to get on with it because he is currently 2nd in Coppa Shell and he can sniff a win here. So 7 minutes to go. Race back underway. Carl Cavers looking to try and resume where he left off, which was to try and build an advantage. John Dillon feeling the pressure from Robert Rees, who lies behind, who leaves the door open a little bit for Faisal Al Faisal to squeeze his way through. So place gained for Faisal Al Faisal. That moves him up into 6th place, drops Robert Rees down into 7th place. It still means he leads Coppa Shell at the moment, but now the next car behind him is Paul Simonson, who is 2nd in Coppa Shell, and then Paul Rogers is behind that, who is 3rd in Coppa Shell. So for Robert Rees, the task has just got that little bit harder now, because he can't afford to let any other cars through now, otherwise they would take the class lead from him. Now John Dillon's still doing a good job of trying to keep everybody behind, but of course he's a bit of a cork in the bottle at the moment. So Faisal Al Faisal, Robert Rees, Paul Simerson, and then just off that Paul Rogers. This is going to be what, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th and 9th all together. John Dillon again just couldn't get the car turned in through the exit of Beckett's as he wanted, so that slows his speed down the Hanger straight. Faisal Al Faisal sits in his slipstream, jinks out from behind, looks to get the run on him as they head up towards Stowe Corner. Can he make it stick? No, John Dillon brakes as late as he can, hooks the inside line. Can he get cleanly off the corner? Will the car wash out wide? Well, it did wash out a little bit wide, but it looks as though he's still just about done enough here. Faisal Al Faisal looking for the inside line in towards Club, and again, yeah, John Dillon just can't get the car turned in anymore, hasn't got the aero that he needs on it on the front, and is just washing out wide, and he's going to get picked off. And also Robert Rees gets picked off through all of that. Paul Simerson got a good run through Club and has threaded his way through into the lead of Coppa Shell at the moment. Robert Rees down to 2nd in Coppa Shell, and it could be 3rd because Paul Rogers is right with him as well as they work their way round through Abbey. But that was real fortuitous and opportunistic driving there from Paul Simerson to pick up the lead of Coppa Shell from Robert Rees. Now Paul Rogers coming under pressure from Chris Smith that sits behind. Now remember, Chris started from the pit lane because of his spin in qualifying, having damaged a set of tyres, so he grabbed extra tyres, which you're allowed to do within the regulations, but you do pick up the penalty of having to start from the pit lane, such is the way the regulations are written. And he has worked his way right up into contention here. So up towards the braking hour for Brooklands, less than 5 minutes to go. The all-blue number 77 car of Paul Simerson leads Coppa Shell. A slightly lighter blue car, number 8, in the hands of Robert Rees, is second in Coppa Shell. Right behind him is Paul Rogers, and then you've got Chris Smith, yesterday's race winner in Coppa Shell for the first time this season, just off that. So first, second, third and fourth in Coppa Shell all together as they fight over 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th in this race. Brilliant stuff as ever. Through Cop's corner, Paul Simerson looked as though he might have just lost a little bit of exit speed there, which allowed a small glimmer of opportunity for Robert Rees, but I don't quite think he's going to sneak his way through back to the lead of the class again. So the order still remains the same. Paul Simerson from Robert Rees. Paul Rogers now has got his hands rather full of Chris Smith, so what was really a quartet for Coppa Shell, they've sort of paired off very slightly for the moment as they now work their way onto the Hanger Straight for the 12th time. I think anyone is quite close enough heading up towards Stowe so as to shuffle the order this time through. So Cavers leading the way still by 7/10 of a second in the race overall. So we still keep an eye on what's going on for the lead of Coppa Shell, who are no doubt all thoroughly enjoying a good squabble. I'm sure Robert Rees will be disappointed he hasn't clung on to the lead of the class, but again he's pushing hard here to try and unlock the door and work his way back ahead of Paul Simerson. Needs to be slightly cautious though, because if he tries it and it doesn't work, look who's there. It's the pink and the Dayglow purple car of Paul Rogers, who claimed pole, remember, for Coppa Shell, having finished on the podium for the first time yesterday. Now is this Robert Rees looking for a move? Well, he tried it at Village, it didn't work, and Paul Rogers goes all the way around the outside at Village to get the inside line for the loop, and he is through to second in Coppa Shell, and the door is open by the look of things for Chris Smith to gain a place as well. So Robert Rees, I'm afraid, is now even off the podium slots in Coppa Shell, having led for so long. He lost 2 places there. Round the outside went Paul Rogers at Village, the door was open as they got towards the loop, and Chris Smith squeezed his way through. So that's all changed now in Coppa Shell. Paul Simerson still out front and leading it, but that is now going to be Paul Rogers, Chris Smith and Robert Rees, second, third and fourth in Coppa Shell. We've still got a couple of minutes to go as well. Now Chris Smith, having taken third in Coppa Shell overall and moved himself up into 9th place, is feeling the pressure as Robert Rees had a little look up the inside going in towards Cop's corner, which isn't really an overtaking opportunity, but if you can put the driver off ahead, then they might run wide on the exit and you can get a good run down towards Maggots and Beckett's, but that wasn't the case. Chris Smith was not buying into that. He hangs on to his newly acquired 9th position, and of course that is the final podium spot in Coppa Shell at this stage, because the top 6 cars all run in Trofeo Pirelli, and then 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th are all Coppa Shell cars. Down the Hanger Straight they'll go. Coppa Shell race leader Paul Simerson coming under pressure from Paul Rogers, who was looking to try and carve his way up the inside as they went in towards the right-hander at Stowe, but nothing changing there. Chris Smith ran a little bit wide round through Stowe corner, which offers up a further glimmer of opportunity for Robert Rees to work his way through, but Chris Smith finally gets the car onto the brakes and round through Club, and therefore the number 69 car still hangs on to the final podium spot in Coppa Shell. Now with 60 seconds to go, going to be on to what should be arguably the last lap of the race now. Carl Cavers leading the way, looking to try and double up here this weekend. A bit like buses, I suppose, for Carl Cavers. You wait for one win and then all of a sudden 2 come along at once, but we haven't quite worked out who is going to pick up the win in Coppa Shell. That is absolutely for sure, because Paul Simerson for Great Paul Birmingham still looks in his mirrors, and who's there? It's Paul Rogers, the JCC 600 back car. Paul Simerson will be hoping he might be able to scoop up win number 2 of the championship season for him. He won the second of the 2 races at Brands Hatch, and we've got problems there. That looked as though Robert Rees had an issue starting the final lap of the race. No such issues though for Carl Cavers, who for the final time is just turning his way round through Cop's corner. Still hasn't got a great deal of daylight between himself though and Andrew Morrow, but Andrew will be, I'm sure, more than happy that yet again it's another podium finish for him. And yes, he might have given up a little bit of championship points to Carl Cavers, so Carl would get 15 for the win, but has also set the fastest lap of the race, so that would net him 16 points, which means that the gap that was 12 points between the pair of them will be down to just 8 points as they head towards mainland Europe and Spa-Francorchamps for the final couple of races that take place in just 2 weeks' time. So out of Stowe Corner comes Carl Cavers. The Grey Paul Nottingham driver claimed his first win of the Ferrari Challenge UK 2023 season yesterday at Silverstone, and it looks as though he's going to double up this weekend here out of Club Corner for the final time. Carl Cavers heads towards the start-finish line, checkered flag comes out, and he wins round 8 of the 2023 Ferrari Challenge UK Championship season, shadowed by Andrew Morrow towards the checkered flag. Hans Sickens will come through to finish in 3rd place. Grant Azil's there in 4th place, but where is the win going to go in Coppa Shell? It looks as though for the second time this season, Paul Simerson at the wheel of the number 77 car is going to bring home the spoils for Grey Paul Birmingham. He comes through to finish in 7th place overall and scoop up the win in Coppa Shell, but only just from Paul Rogers and Chris Smith, who finished 2nd and 3rd respectively. And hats off to Chris Smith from charging his way from the pit lane all the way through the order to ultimately finish on the podium. So Carl Cavers will be enormously pleased with that. He has taken 2 pole positions, he has taken a fastest lap, and he has taken 2 wins so far this weekend. So I think it's not quite maximum points because he didn't set the fastest lap in yesterday's race, but other than that it is pretty much the perfect weekend for the number 51 car for himself and his pro driver coach that sits behind him, which is Lewis Plato. He'll be hugely pleased with that particular one as they head around the Silverstone circuit. Carl waving away, he's a busy man and is going to have a big old smile on his face. He managed to convert pole to the race win yesterday. It wasn't quite as easy because he had to carve his way back through on, what was it, the penultimate lap, the final lap, to finally take the lead of the race because he couldn't convert pole to the early race lead, whereas today, lights the flag victory, wasn't it? And it would have been quite a comfortable margin had it not have been for that safety car which allowed the pack to bunch back up once more. So Carl Cavers heading around Copps Corner, destined for the pit lane at the end of this lap, and there'll be big old smiles on his face when he heads towards Dave Richardson at the podium very shortly. We'll also of course get some reaction from the drivers down there as well as they make their way around the track. Now it's been a busy weekend at Silverstone, but the teams will pack things away. The drivers will already be focusing on Spa-Francorchamps in a couple of weekends time, and it's good that the championship is going to go down to the wire in reality. So it's down to 8 points if I've got the maths right in Trofeo Pirelli. Paul Hogarth finished 9th in Coppa Shell and did not get the fastest lap. So Coppa Shell fastest lap went the way of Robert Rees by the look of things. So he'll have picked up the extra point for that, but with Paul Simerson scoring maximum championship points. Again, I'm trying to do the math on the hop here, but I think Paul Simerson has taken over the Coppa Shell Championship lead. He'll be on something like 101 points, whereas Paul Hogarth will still be on 97. So I think that means that he is now 4 points in the lead of Paul Hogarth, who's pretty much led the Coppa Shell Championship all season. But that is me trying to work out the maths on the hop. Once the cars head in towards the pit lane area, so in towards Parc Fermé, they are ushered. Carl Cavers, double winner this weekend. Andrew Morrow, 2nd on both occasions. And Hans Sickens, who finished just off the podium yesterday, finished in 4th place yesterday, is on the podium today. Paul Simerson will be pleased. That's only his 2nd win of the championship season in Coppa Shell. And he will look very much like the graphic at the bottom of the screen. Big smiley face, 2 raised arms, one would have thought, because that was a hard race for him. Had to work hard to grab the lead in Coppa Shell, and then had to work hard to try and maintain that lead advantage in Coppa Shell. It's no easy wins whether you're in Trofeo Pirelli or Coppa Shell, and no easy wins full stop in the Ferrari Challenge UK in these glorious Ferrari 488 Evo Challenge spec cars. They're 3.9 litre turbocharged engines producing, what's it, about 670 horsepower. V8 engines, of course. So you can see the teams that are not featuring on the podium are brought further down the pit lane towards their garages. but let's confirm the results for you. Carl Cavers claims the win, his second of the weekend, his second of the season, with Andrew Morrow in second place and Hans Sickens there in third. Graham Dazil was fourth ahead of Faisal Al Faisal, who made good progress through the order again to finish in fifth place, and John Dillon, despite the missing bodywork, finished in sixth place. Paul Simerson claimed the win in Coppa Shell as he finished in seventh place, with Paul Rogers in eighth, and Chris Smith will complete the Coppa Shell podium. Then it was Stuart Marsden, Robert Rees, Peter Hunter, Elliot Pickering, Julian Dye, William Terrier and Paul Hogarth were the finishers. Retirement, I'm afraid, for Jonathan Satchell. So let's go down to the pit lane for some reaction, and I think we've got Amanda Stretton down there chatting to some of the drivers.
Well, I'm down here with Paul Rogers. You finished second. You were pole in the class. We had a strategy. We had a talk. You made it difficult for yourself as well, but you're grinning from ear to ear. That was obviously a good race.
Well, it was good fun. The whole thing was good fun because we had a really good race with Paul Simerson. That was amazing. And a couple of the guys got past me. I got pushed wide actually by somebody really a little bit naughty, but anyway, when I got back on the track I lost 2 or 3 places, but I was kind of determined to get it back, and it's a big track. There's loads of time, people make mistakes, there's space to pass, and I passed 2 or 3 cars and got back up, and I wasn't far off getting first really. And a couple of laps I think I'd have got him.
The safety car could have done you some favours.
Yeah, I wasn't really happy with the safety car because that brought all the pack behind me, and I had a little bit of pressure because we had about 10 seconds behind us. The safety car didn't help me because I was only out past the guy in front of me, but there you go. But a really fun race, really fun.
Oh, well done, Paul. You look hot.
I am hot, yeah.
Let him make his way.
Would have been hot behind the wheel there because we pretty much still have clear blue skies here at Silverstone, and even though you've got some long straights here at Silverstone, there's still not much time to relax at all. And when you've got the fireproof overalls on and the balaclava and the crash helmet, and you're focusing on the efforts and all of the heat soak coming through, it is going to be a very, very warm race. Let's go back down to the pit lane. I think Amanda has managed to catch up with Andrew Morrow.
Andrew Morrow with me now. So Andrew Morrow, you started second, finished second. We were talking when you were on the grid about your race strategy and just looking for those opportunities. Carl made it difficult for you.
Yeah, look, the guys got away quick at the start. We all got a good start off the line. Took me a wee bit to get by hand, but once I got by hand I was able to get the job, or get my head down and just focus on the road ahead. Chased after the car, but he was quick. We're pretty much lap for lap, same pace. So safety car sort of closed us up again, which helped us big time, but just again, wee mistake by my point at one place. Thought I might have got him, and then just we're pretty good pace. So no, a good race, and well done to Carl.
Yeah, because I was about to talk about the safety car. You dropped back. I think the gap was about 4 or 5 seconds at that point. It looked like you might have got the jump. Now what's happening, of course, is those valuable championship points have closed up, and you're heading into Spa just a handful of points ahead of him.
Yeah, look, the gap's closed down, but still in the lead, thankfully. So yeah, if we just go into Spa and do the same thing as we always do and focus on the job, hopefully it'll be enough to come away with the championship. But look, we'll see what happens.
Do you like Spa?
Never been to Spa in my life before, so first time will be this time 2 weeks, so we'll see how it goes, but looking forward to it. It's an iconic track.
It is awesome. Yeah, you'll love it. Great stuff. Good luck. Thanks a lot, Andrew.
Yeah, no doubt a chunk of time will be spent on the sim before we go to Spa-Francorchamps, and he's on the front foot when we get there in Belgium in just a couple of weeks' time. So let's just have a look at our top 3 in each of the categories. Carl Cavers and the number 51 car claimed his second win of the weekend for himself and Grey Paul Nottingham. So almost the perfect weekend. Just missed out on a single championship point. Andrew Morrow for Charles Hurst finished second again, which means he keeps this fantastic string of having finished on the podium in every single race so far this season. And in Trofeo Pirelli, the podium was completed by the HR Owen car of Hans Sickens. That's his first podium of this weekend, having just missed out yesterday. In Coppa Shell, Paul Simerson for Grey Paul Birmingham claimed the win. That's just his second win of the season at the wheel of the number 77 car. Second in Coppa Shell was the pole sitter, Paul Rogers for JCT 600. Solid weekend, good haul of points for him over the course of this weekend, and 2 podium visits to boot. And the Coppa Shell podium was completed by the winner for the first time of Coppa Shell yesterday, but third today for the number 69 car of Chris Smith. So the car's ready to be packed away, and the maths will be done as well as to what the championship looks like, but certainly it is going to be beautifully poised as we head to Spa-Francorchamps, with, I think, just about 8 points separating those in Trofeo Pirelli. And I think we might just be able to show you a few highlights from the race. The race got underway, and unlike yesterday, Carl Cavers did convert pole position to the early race lead. It was also a clean first lap as well, with everybody just managing to hold their ground and no contact was made. Carl Cavers was building a good advantage in the lead of the race, whilst Graham Dazil was trying to carve his way through and past the Coppa Shell car of Stuart Marsden. We also need to keep an eye on those cars that started from the pit lane, which included Chris Smith in Coppa Shell and also the car of Paul Hogarth, who came in with a problem at the end of the opening lap. Robert Rees was the early leader in Coppa Shell. He was letting some of the Trofeo Pirelli cars work his way through, whilst also Julian Dyer was involved in a great scrap with Elliot Pickering. John Dillon finally picked his way through and ahead of the Coppa Shell car of Robert Rees. That wouldn't affect his championship scoring, but a bit of bodywork out on track brought out a safety car. That punched up the whole field again, and when the safety car peeled its way back in, the battles would continue. But it was always going to be a tough handling car for John Dillon, having lost that frontal bodywork. He was struggling to get the cars turned into the corner and was slowly going to get picked off by one or two along the way. Also picked off was Robert Rees, who lost the lead of Coppa Shell to Paul Simerson, and ultimately would also lose out on a podium spot in Coppa Shell as Paul Rogers and Chris Smith wrestled their way by. Carl Cavers would come through to claim the win, his second of the season, by just over a second from Andrew Morrow. So the pit lane being cleared of cars, they're all being reversed back into their garage area, and then of course they will all be prepared and sent over to mainland Europe in just a couple of weeks' time, where the championship will be decided, rounds 9 and round 10 taking place at another Grand Prix circuit, of course, Spa-Francorchamps, and it's all still to play for as well. There, as say Andrew Morrow, if I've got the maths right now, just 8 points ahead of Carl Cavers in the championship, and Coppa Shell, I think Paul Simerson has now got a 4-point lead over Paul Hogarth in the Coppa Shell Championship, but that's me, as we say, on the fly, trying to work out all of the mathematics. But someone else is crunching the numbers elsewhere at the moment, and we will be able to update you on exactly the championship positions as we leave Silverstone and head towards the final weekend of racing, weekend number 5 in the 2023 Championships. Time for the podiums, so let's go over to Dave Richardson.
Here we go then, and first podium is going to be for Trofeo Pirelli. Again, what another stunning race. Please give it up loud and proud for our podium placers. Taking P3 in Trofeo Pirelli, Hans Seconds. Taking P2, here comes Andrew Morrow. Like buses, you come along both at once. It's Carl Cavers, 2 out of 2 this weekend. So with the drivers on the podium then, it is time for trophy presentations. We call upon our Ferrari GT official driver, James Collado, to make the trophy presentations. First of all, to Hans Seconds, P3. And then taking P2, of course, Andrew Morrow. And on the top step of the podium, 2 out of 2 this weekend. What a star you are, Carl Cavers. Carl, with his shades on, will be appearing in a blockbuster movie very, very soon. He just looks the part, really, doesn't he? And, of course, we have Coppa Dealer Trophy to be awarded as well, as we welcome a representative from Greypool, Nottingham here. Jonathan is here. And James Collado called upon to make the trophy presentation to Jonathan. And, as always with Ferrari, it's maximum value because the trophies just don't stop coming. We welcome Pirelli's motorsport manager, Lucio Vagani, to make the Pirelli presentation to Carl Cavers. And we will steam in and grab a quick word with Carl. And as I alluded, Carl, you're like a bus this weekend. You wait all year long and then 2 at once. Well done, friend.
Thank you. I don't know what to say, really. It was a hard race. I knew I needed to try and get pace early. But Andrew wasn't letting up. When the safety car came out, I was like, that's it, I'm done. Tyres are gone. Andrew had me under a lot of pressure then, but I think you made one small mistake at Maggots and Beckett's, and it just gave me the Glad it finished when it did, to be quite honest, because I don't think I could have done another lap.
Well, admittance there. There you have it then, your Trofeo Pirelli 1, 2, 3. So, of course, they pose for the focus of the world's media that is among them and on them before we see who will win the Ferrari Champagne race. My money is on Hans Sickens. Sorry, it's just an itch I have, you know. And he's good with the bottle. Let's see. Right, am I going to be right? You bet. Hans Sickens. Oh, Ilaria, who is like my right-hand man and woman, very nearly got covered. Well done to our drivers then. Trofeo Pirelli, 1, 2, 3, Carl Cavus, Andrew Morrow and Hans Sickens. Roll on Spa-Francorchamps, which of course will be the final round of our 2023 Trofeo Pirelli season. Well done to all our drivers. Not likely, Han. Right, we call upon Hairy Mary with the mop, otherwise known as Claudio, here to clear up the podium and get the champagne all sorted once again before we move on to our Coppa Shell podium. What a race in Coppa Shell. Please give it up for all these drivers. P3, what a weekend he's had. Chris Smith. Taking P2, here comes Paul Rogers. And on the top step of the podium, loud and proud, Paul Simerson. And making the trophy presentations to the top three, a warm welcome to the Ferrari North Europe Regional Manager, Federico Pastorelli. First trophy being presented, of course, to Chris Smith, P3. Paul Rogers then back on the podium again, P2. And on the top step of the podium, our race winner is Paul Simerson. So we invite Greypool Birmingham and most senior management team from Greypool Birmingham here to receive the Coppa Dealer Trophy. I'm going to get slaughtered for that. Here to receive a trophy as well. And that is presented by Federico Pastorelli to Greypool Birmingham. And I steam in to grab a word with Paul Simerson. Wow, what a race that was, Paul.
It's a little bit chaotic. Firstly, I feel really sorry for Paul Hogarth. You know, he's had a really poor luck weekend. I'd much sooner be racing him. I'm sure we all would out on the circuit. But it has made things interesting for Spa.
It most certainly has. You couldn't have written the script better, could you? So, and of course, sorry, Paul.
Congrats to Paul, especially. We had a real good battle. There was so many times he was about to dive me, but he's always clean racing.
Fantastic stuff. You've all given us brilliant racing. So there we have it then, the 1, 2, 3. Paul Simerson, Paul Rogers, Chris Smith. They pose for the photographs. There's a lot of affection up there, as you can see. And once again, we make our prediction for who is going to win the Champagne race. And this time it's going to be Paul Simerson, he's told me. So we will see. If you let me down, Paul, I'll have a raving ump with you. Here we go. Who's it going to be? Oh, for goodness sake. Oh, what was that all about? Paul Simerson! What a star! Absolutely brilliant stuff. So there we have it. Thank you, of course, to you. Thanks to all the drivers and everyone else. What a fantastic time we've had here at Silverstone. Up next, in just a couple of weeks' time, we'll be heading to the Ardennes and Spa-Francorchamps. Mark Werrell.
Thank you very much, Dave. Yeah, hopefully the weather will be as good in Belgium as we've had this weekend at Silverstone. But it's all beautifully poised as we head towards Ardennes Forest. Andrew Morrow does continue to lead. I had got the maths right. Just 8 points now ahead of Carl Cavus, who is second in Trofeo Pirelli, with Hans Sickens third in Trofeo Pirelli. Then it's Graham Dazil, John Dillon, Faisal Al-Faisal and Elliot Pickering. But I think mathematically now it's really between those top three in terms of the championship, and nobody else could ultimately be the champion. And then if we look towards Coppa Shell, well, it is Paul Simerson, who is 4 points ahead. Again, I did get the maths right on the fly. He has taken over the lead of the championship from Paul Hogarth, and it's nice to hear that he was almost consoling Paul Hogarth, who'd had a rotten weekend. And Chris Smith is now up to third in the championship, but 36 points adrift with only 35 available at Spa, means that it's really just a two-horse race between the Simerson and Paul Hogarth for the Coppa Shell Championship. Chris Smith is third, Stuart Marsden, Jonathan Satchel and Paul Rogers complete the top six. So it's all poised. Round 9 and round 10 of the championship will take place at Spa-Francorchamps over the course of the 15th, the 16th and the 17th of September. So we'll have to see as to what happens there in just 2 weeks' time. So from everybody here at Silverstone, thanks for joining us. We'll see you in just 2 weeks' time at Spa. Goodbye.